Hello, happy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever you're watching this. So, if you are watching this the day that it's posted, we are smack dab in the middle of camp week. So, we are in the busiest season of the year for us. And if you're not sure what that means, go watch last week's video on how to prep for the busy season. And it is linked over in the corresponding vlog as well. But today we're going to talk about the 6 common objections that I hear when people are either talking about possibly homeschooling in the future, or they're telling you why homeschooling is a bad idea. And then I'm going to show you or explain to you how you can combat every single one of them in your homeschool to where none of them are an issue for your child. Now, as a homeschool creator, I get a lot of comments, good and bad, on my content, but specifically on YouTube and Instagram, because you can do it anonymously. So you can make an account with no name and no followers and no picture, but you can come kind of be a little bit of a keyboard warrior, if you will. Now, sometimes I get comments from real people. They're at least respectful. That's one of the ones we're going to talk about today. Other times I just get comments that are completely out of the blue, and I don't give them hardly any weight because, again, they're probably some 35-year-old living in their parents' basement. So I'm not that worried about it. Now, the one thing that all of these have in common is either somebody telling me that they are against homeschooling because so-and-so's ex-wife's baby's dog was homeschooled, and here's all the reasons it failed him, or they themselves were homeschooled, and this is why they hated it or why it, quote unquote, ruined their life. Now, if you're new here, welcome. If you have been coming along this crazy homeschool journey with us, welcome back. And I appreciate every one of you that tune into the content every single week. And you let me know your thoughts in the comments. I love having the conversations one-on-one with you in my DMs or in the comment section. So keep doing that. I love that you're coming back. But if you're new, I'm Tanya Johnson. I'm the founder of Helping Hearts Homeschool, where I help homeschool moms and ministry leaders, because let's face it, we're usually one and the same, navigate the waters of social media. So we focus on creating fun and exciting and enjoyable homeschool lives while using social media in a way that glorifies God and funds our homeschool. Because like anything else, social media is a tool. A tool is not good. A tool is not bad. A tool is however you choose to use it. Now, the comments that I'm going to go through today is one that I got about I got it about a month ago. I replied about 2 weeks ago because that's when I saw it. And I will say this person does not have a channel or any kind of presence on social media. It wasn't using their real name, but their experience seems to be genuine with what they went through as a homeschool child. And like I said, I don't think that it was just a spam account that was trolling. And I will say, and I told her this, I agree with pretty much everything that they said in this comment as far as what the objections are. But I don't agree that that is how every homeschool is ran, and it's not how your homeschool has to be run. So that is what I want to dive into today, are the 6 points that she brought up that are very valid, that I have been talking about for years within the homeschool community. But I want to kind of dive into how she said certain things affected her childhood, and then kind of show you how you can combat that with your own child. So I'm going to kind of show you how the conversation plays out over here on the screen before we dive in, because I want you to have the full context. And again, I'm assuming that this person is a she. I guess she did not use any kind of pronouns in there, so I don't know if it's a man or a woman, but I'm going to use she because that's what I've been saying all along. And again, there's nothing that tells on the profile if it's a man or a woman. But she says that she feels bad for my kids because she was homeschooled and it ruined her life, and that basically kids should be with other kids. So again, I don't disagree with her, but the point that she made there was simply, I wasn't socialized. And so I responded back very kindly because, one, if you haven't seen my how I started homeschooling video, I was very anti-homeschool, and socialization was one of the reasons. So I responded back and I just asked her if she would clarify if she meant that she felt like her childhood was ruined because there was no socialization. And then she responded back and told me that that was one of the reasons that she felt like homeschooling was bad. She did a whole list of other reasons. And again, her points are very valid and her experience is very valid because that's what she went through. Now, you can pause this if you want to read through the whole thing. I'm going to pick out some of the pieces, but you're welcome. Again, I want to make sure everyone sees it in context. And then you can also pause right here where I give my response and basically just let her know I think all of her points are valid and I agree with every single one of them, as far as I don't think the way that she was quote unquote homeschooled, and I use that in quotes because I wouldn't even say she was homeschooled. I would say she was neglected. That wasn't a homeschool journey she was on. She had very neglectful parents for whatever reason. Now, I don't know her. I don't know her story. I am just basing that off of what she told me in the comment section. Now, it could be that she made the entire thing up and that was just her point of view, but probably not. Usually when kids remember certain things like that, they may exaggerate a little bit, but they're not just completely making it up out of the blue. So I let her know that I agreed with her and all of her points I thought were very valid. And then I let her know the steps that we took to make sure that our daughter did not go through any of those circumstances that she did. And also that these are the things I teach in my community. So we're going to go through one by one, all 6, and just kind of see what her experience can teach us in the way that we are homeschooling our kids. Because I do think that it is wise to talk to previously homeschooled students and get their perspective of, okay, did you like it or did you not like it? What did you like about it? And if you didn't like homeschooling, why not? Like, what would you have fixed about it? Because majority of the things that they did not like are things that should not have been going on in homeschool in the first place. Now, the first thing that she brought up was isolation. So she said that when she started homeschooling, basically she homeschooled herself. She had to grow up really fast. She didn't have a teacher. She didn't have any guidance. It was just kind of, here are the books, or maybe it was videos. She did not clarify. But here's the curriculum. Go school yourself. Now, I had the very same experience. I did the ACE curriculum. I talked about that a little bit in a video a couple of months ago, where I just homeschooled myself and I was left alone to do it all the time. Now, I will say that's not right. If you are signing on to be a homeschool teacher, then you are the teacher. And a teacher does a lot more than just hand curriculum to the kid. Now, she said that she was homeschooled, I believe she said starting in 5th grade. I could be wrong on that. You can look back at the conversation. But she was young. She wasn't a high school kid. So at that point, teachers provide love and structure and interaction and camaraderie and a level of friendship. It is not just, here's a book, go sit in a corner and I'll check in with you next week. Like, that's not what a teacher is. So if you're signing up to homeschool your kids, you are signing up to be their teacher. So no, do not hand them a stack of books and say, go for it. Do not sit them in front of a video and say, listen to the teacher online and school yourself, basically. If that is your method of homeschooling, you should put your kids back in school. And again, I get it. I'm a homeschool creator. That's not a popular thing for me to say. Probably going to lose some followers, and that's totally fine. If you are not willing to homeschool your kids in a way that is healthy for them, then homeschooling is not a good option for your family. If 2020 has taught us anything, isolation is not healthy, period. Now, the other side of isolation would be the socialization part, which she did not specifically say, but because she said kids should be with other kids, that tells me she feels like she missed out on that side as well, which is still a part of isolation. So yes, kids should be with other kids outside of just their siblings. Now, you might say, well, Tanya, I'm a homeschool creator. Like, we have a large family. How do we get outside of our family? Church is a good option. Church is something I think every family should participate in, and that provides a lot of socialization as well. If you're part of a church that has a thriving kids program and a thriving teen program, and I realize they're not all created equal, you may have to find a church that fits your needs there without sacrificing theology. And when we moved across country and we were looking for a church, there were some things that I specifically wanted in a church, but one of the things that we needed was a thriving kids program. We had been in a church, not the one we just came from, but we have been in a church where the kid and teen program was kind of dead. And so we definitely knew we did not want that for our child going into the church world where we were getting to handpick a new church. Now, our church does a ton of stuff for the teenagers, but I'm going to focus on the kids stuff because that's the season of life we're in. My daughter is going into 4th grade, so she's not in the teen group yet, but our church does field trips and weekly Bible clubs and fun, like, family activities where the adults and the children go and do fun things. We're planning a trip to Pennsylvania, I think, in early of next year. And the trip is specifically for families. So we're going to take our kids going to play together. The adults are going to have the friendship and the fellowship. And we're going to go do some fun things. I think they mentioned Hershey Park and Sight and Sound, which I've never been to, and just some very fun things to do as a family and to get outside of our homes and socialize with other like-minded Christians. And then just the weekly classes that they go to and the amount of work that these teachers are putting in that I firsthand have been able to see tells me that they care about our kids, and our kids are having a ton of fun as they are going through these classes as well. Now, a couple other options when it comes to socialization are going to be local homeschool groups. Check out your library. A lot of times the library will meet either once a month or twice a month with a certain age group of kids. They sometimes even have specific homeschool days that they do and they have fun. You can check other businesses in your area. Like we had a play center in Chicago that we came from, and they had homeschool days once a month. So there are plenty of ways to socialize your kids, but it does take a little extra work on you. The school system, the socialization, they do it for us. Now, I realize there's like a lot of talk around public school and socialization and how they're not allowed to talk and they have to be quiet the whole time and all the things. There's truth and false narrative around that. There's a little bit of both. But they do get to see their friends every day. They do get to build those relationships outside of the family. And they also get to go and do these fun things. And honestly, there are a lot of really good teachers in the public school system. So it's your job to be just as good of a teacher as what your kid would have in the public school system, if not better. And then if all else fails, create your own groups. This is something that I did for years. We would have homeschool parties once a month at my house. And they weren't just homeschool kids. We just called them a homeschool party. For example, if the school would have a party for a certain holiday, then I would do the same thing for my daughter. So when they would have Valentine parties, we would have Valentine parties. When they would have their big Halloween party, we would have our Halloween party. Christmas, Easter, you name it, we did it. And it wasn't just homeschool kids we invited. So any of my daughter's friends, we would invite a lot of them over. We had a giant backyard, so we had plenty of space. And we would have a homeschool party that was themed, and we'd have games and all the fun things. And it was just a way for her to interact with her friends, just like she would if she was in school during that season. Now, we live in an apartment now. That's what we chose to move into when we moved across country because we're not 100% sure how long we're staying here. So we don't have a big backyard, but we do have a pool. So now, instead of having big homeschool parties, we have play dates. And I try in the summer to plan a play date a week, which may sound chaotic, but I don't have to entertain these kids. I don't have to entertain their parents. They come over, they have fun. We grill burgers. Sometimes there's crafts for them to do, but we just make it a very fun, enjoyable time. There's a park right outside of the pool. So they get to have lots of socialization, lots of interaction with other kids their age in a safe, controlled environment. So having said all of that, isolation is a real thing in homeschool. It's your job to make sure that your kids aren't isolated and they are getting that socialization that is absolutely needed. And when all else fails, yes, you're going to have to go out of your way and get a little bit inconvenienced to make that happen for them. Now, number 2 that she mentioned was authority figures outside of the parents. She mentioned that she has a huge issue with authority. And I want to say that when it's an authority issue, usually it's an authority issue, not outside the parents. She talked about her parents in a way that was very negative, and the fact that they didn't homeschool correctly and they left her to herself. And just, you can tell the authority issue is with the parents as well. It's not just outside the parents, but she specifically said outside of the parents. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But in general, authority issues come from the heart. So it's not something that is so much because she didn't have authority figures outside of her mom and dad. It's because she was never taught healthy authority viewpoints in the first place, even within the home. So going through some kind of a discipleship program with your kids is going to help them create a healthy view when it comes to authority and that healthy respect for authority without blindly obeying authority. Because there's a fine line when it comes to being submissive and obedience and all the trigger words that happen in the abuse community. I know I came from that. There is a very fine line between teaching our kids to obey authority and to blindly follow authority. And that's not something I'm going to talk too much in this video about, but it is something that I feel like needs to be said. So yes, Give them some authority figures outside of just you and your husband. But that again comes in form of healthy adults in their life. And that again goes back to number one and getting them in some of these groups that we talked about. Now, number three is boundaries. And she made the statement that she did not understand healthy boundaries because there were no doors that were locked in the house. I don't 100% know how those two correlate, although I do agree that teaching healthy boundaries is a thing we should be teaching in our homeschools. I know public school kids that have boundary issues as well as homeschool kids. So I think that's less on the school that you choose to put your kid in and more on the parents, just my opinion. Teaching boundaries is definitely a conversation we need to have with our kids. And when I say conversation, I mean an ongoing conversation throughout their childhood. It has a lot more to do with us teaching them what healthy boundaries are and giving them real world practice and real world examples than it does whether or not we lock doors in our house. And then number four is structure. She mentioned that she has poor character basically because she wasn't raised with structure. Now, this is one I talk about a lot. You guys know, as a former teacher, I have sat through countless hours of child psychology classes, and kids thrive on structure, period. So, do I think we should be teaching structure in our households? Absolutely. And I actually have a whole bonus training that you can access over on the blog as well. That is all about time management and the 4 steps of time management, because we got to teach them when they're young. But teaching a 2-year-old time management is a whole lot different than teaching a 12-year-old. So there's a process that we walk our kids through. And then I have those free scheduling cards that I have on the blog for you as well. So you'll definitely want to make sure you head over there and access that if structure is something that you're not 100% defined on in your house. But I want to have a little bit of a caveat here, because it is not fair as an adult to blame our character issues on our childhood. Like, that's not a thing. As a 33-year-old adult, me not showing up for my clients and missing deadlines, they're not going to give me a pass because I say, oh, well, as a 15-year-old, no one ever taught me to get up on time. So it's just not a thing. We have to take responsibility as adults for our own character flaws and our own discipline issues. Now, again, I don't know how old this author is. So if she's in that transition window from adult to childhood, like maybe she's 18, 19, possibly even 20, like recently moved out of her parents' house, I would give her some leeway. And anyone in that position, I'd give a little bit of leeway. It is harder to learn those character traits as an adult who's not had to have them their whole life than it is someone who's learning from the ground up as a child. But again, I don't know how old she is. It's just not fair as an adult to not take accountability for those issues and blame them on something that happened in our childhood. But back to the point, yes, I agree we should be teaching our children structure, and we should be teaching them how to get up with an alarm, get up at a certain time, go to bed with a certain time, follow a certain rhythm throughout the day, have control of their schedule, because it's not fair to them to release them out into the world as a 17, 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid who can't get up and go to work on time because they spent all night playing video games or scrolling through TikTok. So yes, it's a valid point. Yes, we should be teaching it to our kids, but we should also be teaching them personal accountability to where they are accountable for their actions, not mom and dad. Now, number 5, she mentioned not having very good education. That is something that is a very real thing in the homeschool world, unfortunately. And again, part of that is her parents not being present. So if we're not present homeschooling our kids, how do we know what they're struggling with or what gaps that they're going to have? Now, if you have not downloaded the homeschool starter guide that I have for you in the video I did last week, it's completely free. I'm going to link it up on the blog. If you follow the starter guide on how to get started homeschooling, you won't have those big educational gaps that every kid should know. Now, I'm not talking about there's going to be educational gaps wherever you go, but an educational gap of, oh, I don't know everything about everything when it comes to the history of Egypt. I don't know, right? Is going to be a lot different than, oh, I'm a 20-year-old adult and I don't know what the difference between a noun and an adverb is. So educational gaps, and educational gaps are like a totally different thing from each other. So that is something that I help you walk through of, okay, what should they know? Like, what should every kid know when they graduate high school versus, okay, depending on your child's interest, yes, there are some things that they should know that other kids probably wouldn't care about. Like my daughter, for example, she's really getting into videography and wanting to like do digital creations, which part of it's because she sees me do them. So it might be just a fluke where she likes it for a while and she's not going to do anything with it, which is totally fine. But if she decides to do any kind of online business, which she's thinking about starting like a bracelet making company is what she's kind of thinking about right now, then she's going to need those skills. And of course, a bracelet making company probably is not going to, launch her into a career when she's 30. It could. There are kids that do that, but probably it'll just be a fun little hobby business. But it may spark her interest for some kind of other entrepreneurial journey. So she's going to need a skill set that other kids may not need that are going to go off to be doctors or veterinarians or something that's a whole different path, if that makes sense. So that's one perk of homeschooling, is getting to grow with your kids and helping them launch into adulthood with something that they're passionate about and giving them that extra set of tools that's going to be tailored specifically to them. And then number 6 is communication. She mentioned specifically that she's a hard time communicating with other adults and that they will take her as being rude when she's just speaking normally, and just a lot of communication issues. And that is something that absolutely needs to be taught. But that is also something that a lot of that comes from that social awkwardness from not being around other people. So yes, you can teach communication skills, but a big part of that also needs to be real world experience, which again, go back to number 1 and get your kids around other kids and around other adults. Now, one of the subjects that we specifically go over in our homeschool is SEL, or social emotional learning. So the freebie pack that I have for you today for this week specifically is going to be an SEL fun activity pack. So I've got 5 activities for you to go through with your kids, spark that conversation all around communication today. And then I also have another bonus training for you on just helping them talk about their emotions. And part of communication is learning how to speak about your emotions, feel them, and then convey them to the other person. So I have a whole training around that, as well as an additional freebie. So this week you have so many bonus trainings, you have so many bonus freebies that you can download, and just lots of fun things to incorporate in your homeschool and make sure that you are checking off some of those boxes. That when I hear a homeschool objections, I typically think very simple ones, and these are a lot more in-depth objections. And I appreciate the fact that she mentioned a lot of these, because I think these are things that as homeschoolers, we don't necessarily think about if it's not right in front of us. And if you didn't get the pattern, a lot of these tie back to number 1, and that is making sure that our kids are not isolated. Again, if 2020 did not do anything but teach us that isolation is not healthy for our mental space, then, at least we got that out of it. When people hear homeschoolers, I think they just automatically assume it's synonymous with hermits, and that's just not the case. Most of us as homeschoolers, we don't keep our kids with us 24/7 indoors, away from all other humans. That's just not reality. We're out socializing with people just like the public school world is. We just take control of our kids' education to make sure that they're learning what they need to learn in a God-honoring way. So we're just taking control of their education versus passing them off to someone else for 8 to 10 hours a day and trusting that they're going to get taught what they actually need to be taught to be a productive citizen in life outside of the classroom. So I hope this helps. I hope it eased some of your maybe worries when it comes to homeschooling. If you're already a homeschooler, maybe it gave you some information that you can go back and tell family when they are coming at you with some of these objections. So again, I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. If you could leave me a comment on this specific video, I'd love to have a conversation with you in the comment section. But even if it's just a comment letting me know what you thought or maybe which point that you liked the most out of these, it helps the channel grow and it helps the homeschool movement grow, which I am a huge advocate for. And then same thing, if you would not mind just hitting the like button on here, taking the extra 2 seconds to click subscribe and click that notification button so you are notified when new videos come out. I would absolutely appreciate it. It's a huge, huge, huge blessing to have so many of you support this homeschool small business. And I will see y'all in next week's training.